Hey everyone, welcome to another video, and today I'm incredibly excited to share with you my Orianna guide. Now, Orianna is my bread and butter champion. She's my baby, honestly. I've played this champion for something like 6 or 7 seasons. It's probably been one of the main reasons I've been able to place that challenger consistently over the years because of my level of champion mastery on Orianna. I've actually been known as, I was actually an Orianna one-trick back in the day. I was known for it when I was a pro mid laner. This is the champion I know the most about, even more so than Twisted Fate, out of all the champions in my champion pool. So I'm incredibly excited to get into the details, cover everything there is to know about Orianna, and whether or not you're a beginner trying to get to an intermediate level, or maybe intermediate level heading to a high level, or even like a high level Orianna trying to go professional. So everything's going to be covered within this video. Sit back, relax, grab a notepad, and again, take your time with watching the video. You're not going to be able to implement all the stuff overnight. It will take a lot of time. So let's dive straight in. Let's start out by talking about the runes. Now, there are so many rune pages you can take on Orianna. In order for you to really understand the rune pages, I need to go into detail. If you're not interested in any of this, you can just skip it over, go to another section. But I will preface this by saying my favorite, the most versatile rune page, guys, if you're not really interested in any of the detail, is Phase Rush, Mana Flow Band, Transcendence, Scorch into Time Warp Tonic, and Magical Footwear Secondary. That's my personal favorite rune page in the current meta. It's good in laning phase, good in mid game, good in late game. Now let's get into a little bit more detail. Now, Phase Rush particularly is my favorite rune to take at the moment, purely because of the amount of threat in the current meta. The game has evolved to a point where people know how to punish these slower, high-range mid-lane mages because they just know they just want to dive you. They don't allow you to play the fight slow. So Phase Rush really gives you that extra bit of freedom in mid-game for that extra bit of self-peel, movement speed, so you don't really have to rely on your flash, and it allows you to position a little bit more aggressively, get that damage off without being incredibly scared. Now, Mana Flow Band is for obvious reasons because Orianna is incredibly mana hungry. Finish that off with Transcendence, and now down here you have two options: Scorch or Gathering Storm. Now, Scorch is good with Orianna because of how reliable her poke is. Scorch isn't good on champions where your poke is either unreliable or you have incredibly high cooldowns. Now, because Orianna's Q is a relatively low cooldown and quite reliable to hit with the way I play Orianna, which we'll get into, I truly recommend taking Scorch 99% of games. If you're maybe a rookie Orianna and you're not really much of an aggressive player, you can just take Gathering Storm, but I just don't really recommend it. Now for the secondary part of the rune. Now this is where things get incredibly important and really differ depending on your style of the way you play lanes as Orianna. Now, the first option we have here is Domination Secondary. This is where you go Taste of Blood with Ravenous Hunter. Now, let's compare these two. We've got on one side Taste of Blood with Ravenous Hunter, and on this side we have Time Warp Tonic with Magical Footwear. Now, because I feel like the game has evolved to a point where it's played a lot faster, I personally, still to this day, I still prefer, and I've tested all of them even again recently, Time Warp Tonic with Magical Footwear, because this gives me a little bit more laning strength, because I can actually go for Corrupting Pot first with Time Warp Tonic. Allows me to trade a little bit more aggressively. I get plenty of mana with my Mana Flow Band anyway, and I get mana from my Lost Chapter first item. It just gives me a little bit more lane freedom, and it's not fully lane focused because I round it out with Magical Footwear. Whereas on the other hand, if maybe you're in a very slow matchup, you're not really going to be heavy trading too much and you just want to scale, then this domination tree is actually a lot nicer because it actually allows you to not have to buy pots at all. You can just sell your pots because you can rely on the sustain you get from Ravenous Hunter, and it scales incredibly well. So it's more of a scaling rune page. Then it's important to also understand down here, you see a lot of Oriannas also opt in for attack speed. Now you may ask, why would Orianna go attack speed, or when would you go attack speed versus adaptive force? Now, because Orianna is a champion that doesn't deal well with getting pushed in. She doesn't really want to get pushed under tower. She doesn't want to be poked. She doesn't want people to slow build waves into her. In some matchups, you really want to contest early. You maybe in a matchup versus Zoe, for example, you want to contest the wave. You want to keep the wave in the middle. Now, attack speed can be very helpful because yes, you get less damage on your Q poke, but it allows you to thin the wave with your auto attacks a lot more. So it's a very it's go attack speed if you want to be thinning the wave. Maybe you're scared you're going to get pushed in too much. It's quite good in matchups, maybe versus like Anivia, Xerath, Victor, even Cassiopeia to a certain extent. Zoe, a lot of champions that want to contest you early and want to prevent you from pushing them in. It's just a really, really solid choice, but majority of the time you're still going to be completely fine with Adaptive Force. Now let's go to the second rune page here, which is Airy. Now Airy is the easy to execute rune. It's more lane focused, although it does scale quite well because it helps your shielding as well. I will only take Airy in games where I don't need the extra self peel. So maybe I'm versing a very low threat composition or very low they don't really have many dive tools. So maybe I'm versing champions like Graves, maybe Kindred, Vladimir. Just very low threatening champions. Then I can just purely focus on the laning phase. I don't need phase rush. I don't need that extra self peel. So you go into mana flow, self-explanatory, into transcendence, and then if you're going Airy, you have to go Scorch. It doesn't make sense at all to go Gathering Storm because Airy you're all-inning on the lane. So Scorch makes the most sense. And then again, for the same reasons, you have these two options. You're in maybe an easier matchup. You're not going to be heavy trading. Maybe you just completely outrange them. You can just get away with Taste of Blood and Ravenous Hunter. Whereas on the other hand, you can either go Time Orb Tonic into Biscuits if it's a very heavy trading matchup, if you're playing very fast, or the way you play, or just Time Warp and Boots, which is my personal favorite. And again, attack speed if you want that extra bit of push power. And if you're versing a champion that has a lot of wave clear and you really you're just worried that you're not going to be able to consistently get the shove, then DMAT is also another option. It gives you a lot of freedom for basing as well. But I just would recommend against it. I think it's either Time Warp Biscuits or Time Warp Boots if you're going to go down that road. So again, these two secondary pages with Domination Inspiration really comes down to your style, your take on the matchup, how you interpret each matchup. So what I would recommend is try both. Try both what you feel is best, what suits the most for you. Now lastly, there is the Spellbook page. Now, this one is the one that Dopa uses a lot. I've actually strayed a little bit away from this page because I feel like at the moment it is okay. So the way this rune page works is it's very utility focused. You're not really focused on the laning phase. You're basically minimizing the laning phase and you're just going to become a utility bot. Yes, it helps you scale very well as well because you can take TP, then swap to something like Cleanse or Exhaust or Barrier. It operates in the same way as Phase Rush, but I feel like you just, the reason I'm not a fan of it is because I prefer the reliability of Phase Rush, and sometimes the laning phase just feels a little bit weaker because this spellbook really doesn't help you with trading at all, whereas Phase Rush can really help you with trading, and I'll show that in the first VOD we're going to go over today. But again, just quickly going down the line here, you got either Boots or Stoppy here. I don't really like Stoppy anymore purely after the nerfs because it comes around so late and it barely contributes any gold to Zhonya, so a lot of the time I just recommend Boots. Then again, you have the option between Biscuits and Dematerializer. Again, it really depends on the way you want to play your matchup, but again, Dematerializer only is worth it if you're coming in with a plan. If you really know you're going to maybe be pushing and moving, maybe you're dueling with someone, you want to force priority on a certain wave. Otherwise, Biscuit's going to be consistent. And depending if you want to start Doran's or Corrupting Pot, just go Time Warp or Cosmic Insight, depending on the speed on which you play the lane and the matchup. Now, you'd always want to be going Mana Flow because she's incredibly mana hungry. And there's a few options here. Again, I personally like Scorch, but because this is a scaling rune page, you can also opt in for the more scaling rune, which is Transcendence or Gathering Storm. But if you are taking these, you're basically saying, well, my laning is going to be very, very weak. And I'm not really going to be contesting you at all in lane. And then again, the same thing with attack speed if you really want that pushing power. So overall, the way I would rank the pages, I personally wouldn't recommend this spellbook page unless you're very experienced. Maybe you're in higher elo games where the utility is going to come more in handy. Overall, I would recommend going Airy for laning phase or Phase Rush just for a really good bread and butter rune page. Moving on next, we're going to go straight into summoners. Now, there's two options basically. There's the core and the situational. Now, TP, in my opinion, is the most core, reliable summoner choice for Orianna. Because the way I view TP, it's like a get out of jail free card. Because I value CS and XP incredibly highly with Orianna because she's so item reliant, if I maybe maybe have to blow flash to a gank, maybe I don't manage my mana properly, maybe I get forced out of lane, and I don't really want to get behind in CS. I can come back, I can TP, I can establish a bit of control, I won't really miss any CS and XP. I'm going to use that opportunity to get some vision down and isolate the lane. That's what TP is really, really good for. Or you can even just hold on to it, even if you're winning lane, and don't really need to use it for lane. You can use it for counter ganks on side lanes. Overall, it's just a very reliable core summoner. Now, we've also got the situational summoners here. We'll start off by talking about heal. Now, I don't mind heal personally. I think heal is a completely viable choice. Now, heal is good if you want to play the lane quite fast. Maybe you want to play Orianna, maybe you're duo with someone, maybe you've got a very favorable jungle matchup, you want to play it quite fast, maybe more 2v2 oriented, where you're not really going to need the TP, and maybe you're going to be more early skirmish focused. I don't mind heal, because it also has a utility focus to it as well. I'm actually not a fan of Ignite, and the reason I'm not a fan of Ignite is because it doesn't make sense with Orianna's identity. Now, Ignite is a lane spell. You want to go for solo kills, which means most likely heavy trading, blowing maybe summoners, getting close enough in range where you're going to even get to use Ignite. Like, you're going to be putting yourself in situations that don't make sense for Orianna. I just feel like if you're playing Orianna like this, just play another champion. Just play Syndra. I just don't think Orianna thrives in that sense. And the only reason you would take Ignite is maybe you're smurfing. You know that you're versing a mid laner that is considerably worse than you, and you can just get away with using it. Otherwise, I would not recommend it. And then you've got, obviously, Cleanse for obvious reasons. If you're versing a very CC-oriented team comp, maybe you're versing Lissandra, Twisted Fate. You can even take a verse Zoe, champions like that. And then you've also got Exhaust. I personally like taking Exhaust versus champions like Fizz. You can take it versus basically any assassin. It's a very good, solid summoner. Now, the benefit of going Exhaust, actually, is because sometimes on Orianna, I really don't want to build an early defensive item. Maybe I'm versing a Zed. I really don't want to rush Zhonya's. Maybe I just want to sit on Seekers because I really want my Lost Chapter and my Ludens as well, or my GLP. Now, if I don't have Exhaust, I feel more inclined to finish my Zhonya's for that level of self-peel. Whereas if I have Exhaust, sometimes if I have a good early laning phase, I can just go straight into Ludens, not have to worry about Zhonya's, and rely on my Exhaust. So that's just another option there, what it really opens you up to do. Now on to builds, guys. Now, I know there's a lot going on this page. We've got little notes everywhere. We've got boxes everywhere. It's a bit full on. Give me a second. I will explain it. The reason it's a bit intense is because I really want to get across the theory behind the itemization. So you're just not going to be blindly following my guide. You're not going to be blindly following what I build. You're going to be alt-tabbing. What does Curtis build? No. I want you to understand why, so you can adapt given the way you're playing the lane, given the matchup you're playing, given your rune page, etc. So you can really optimize the itemization to however you want to play this champion. Now, let's start by quickly talking about the first two items. Now, it's either Corrupting Pot or Doran's Ring. Now, obviously, this does depend on runes. If you are going for the Time Warp, you want to be opting in for the Corrupting Pot. If you're going Domination secondary, I really recommend going Doran's Ring. Now, the reason I personally prefer Corrupting Pot is because of the first base. Now, a lot of the time, you're not going to be able to stay in lane for 1300 gold. It's just too much gold. It's too much of a long time. You're going to give too much pressure. A lot of the time, you are going to be basing at least once before you can get your Lost Chapter, because Lost Chapter is your key first spike. Now, I found when I go to base early pre 1300 gold, if I actually started Corrupting Pot, it feels very nice to go Dark Seal into Amplifying Tomb, because between the sustained Corrupting Pot and Dark Seal gives me, and the gold that this contributes towards Lost Chapter, it just feels like a really solid first base. Whereas when I was going Doran's Ring and then going Dark Seal refillable, it just felt really dirty. There's something about it. I just didn't get enough sustain with this refillable, given how people can just force trades onto me. It just felt really bad. So Personally, I prefer Corrupting Pot purely because of the Dark Seal Corrupting Pot interaction and how nice it actually, and how it actually allows me to get to 1300 gold and my Lost Chapter off my second recall. So that's just a personal preference. A little thing to note here, guys, is you may ask on other champions like Echo, we go maybe double Dorans, or Azir, you go double Dorans. Now, there's only a very few rare circumstances I recommend going double Dorans on Orianna, which I've got on the side here. Note double Dorans unique. If you're versing maybe an assassin where you're going to be going first, you want first item seekers. This is where double Dorans really comes into play because resistances are incredibly efficient when you have HP. But if you don't have HP, resistances on their own, they're not really that efficient. They don't work too well. So for example, maybe you're versing a Zed. Let's just say I started Corrupting Pot versus a Zed and my first item was Seekers. The armor's not going to be that effective because I have no HP. But if I actually had Dorans or double Dorans into Seekers, the HP is going to make me so tanky in combination with the armor. It just synergizes really well. So if you are going to be opting in for early magic resist or early cloth armor, you're versing a very assassin-oriented or burst-oriented composition, double Dorans can really work well. But on the other hand, if you're not going down that road, you're not going down this road of Seekers, etc., then just Corrupting Pot with Dark Seal, first item, feels really, really nice. And because you don't really need that durability and you're getting your mana sustain from your Corrupting Pot and your Dark Seal anyway, and I would highly recommend going Amplifying Tomb over Dorans because your Lost Chapter spike is so important. I don't recommend this on any other champion, on many other champions. So for example, on Syndra, because you're not reliant on your Lost Chapter spike and you're already strong in the early game with just maybe Corrupting Pot, Dark Seal, and a Dorans, you don't really need the Lost Chapter. Whereas on the other hand, Orianna really needs Lost Chapter to be able to do anything in the game. So that's why I prefer building a Amplifying Tomb over a Dorans in the early laning phase, because it just allows you to get to it a lot quicker. Now, if I'm versing maybe a Fizz or a Kassadin, a lot of the time, actually, I'll still just sit on one Null Magic Mantle or maybe one Cloth Armor. This is the main reason is because maybe you're versing like a champion that builds lethality. If you verse a champion like Pyke or Pantheon and they come back with first item Serrated Dirk, Cloth Armor mitigates the effectiveness of lethality a lot. So just sitting on, even if you're sitting on one Cloth Armor and you don't even finish it into a Seekers, it can just give you enough durability to just go straight into your Lost Chapter without being scared of getting one shot. So that's just something to note on the side as well. Now, let's get back to the main build. So obviously we go straight into our first key item, which is going to be Ludens or GLP. Now you may ask, how do I know which one to build? It does come down to preference, but in my opinion, GLP is better if you're versing a team comp that you can keep at range and kite. So maybe you're versing champions like Cassio, Graves, Kindred, anything that doesn't have hard engage and you can just keep at range, or they're very immobile. It's very, very nice. But if fights are going to be played incredibly fast, you can't really kite them or keep them at a distance. You just need to get that burst off. Ludens is just way better. That's kind of how I feel about Ludens versus GLP. Then you want to be rounding out your build however you really like. If fights are going to be very extended, maybe you can go in for Liandry's secondary. That's where you're going to be having a lot of extended skirmishes. You're not really going to be focused around burst. Although I don't do this too often because I found that Orianna's identity is very burst oriented in mid game. You just want to get that big combo off, burst, in and out. So this is why I personally prefer Morello's, or if they have, and I'll tie this down here with this item, if you're the sole AP on the team and they're not getting any MR, I love going like Ludens or GLP into Oblivion Orb, sitting on Oblivion Orb, then going into my next item. Maybe if a Banshee's for defensive purposes, a Zhonya's for defensive purposes, or straight into my Rabadon's Death Cap if I'm really, really far ahead. So that's the way I like to build, but keep in mind that my other note down here, the downside of a defensive item first. If I go straight into Ludens into Banshees, it significantly reduces how effective I am going to be in mid game. My burst will be significantly lower. Like the difference between going like Ludens into Oblivion Orb or Ludens into Morello's versus Ludens into Banshees or Zhonya's is so big. So just keep that in mind. If you don't have to go a defensive item, just really don't. if you can get away with it, don't do it, essentially. That's just the main message there. And then the rest makes a lot of sense. Really depends on what's happening in the game. Maybe you're versing a Zed or a heavy dive comp, you need Zhonya's. Maybe you're versing something like a Syndra, or maybe a Zoe, you need a bit of defensive capability. Banshees are really nice. And then again, just standard stuff, Rabadons and Void Staff. Now, down the bottom here with boots, again, CC, Mercury Treads, AD, Tarbies, but majority of the time you really want to be going Sorcery Treads. If you are the only AP, if you go like Ludens into Oblivion Orb into finishing your Sorks, you just do ridiculous amounts of damage. You basically do true damage. You're absolutely out of control, so keep that in mind. If you do have an AP jungle or an AP top laner or something like that, I hate not building Sorks. So like I really feel like I need Sorks if I have a lot of AP on my team. Otherwise, if I'm the only AP on my team, I feel less bad building something like Mercs or Tarbies or something like that. So moving on, we're going to talk about the matchup tier list, everyone. So this is my matchup tier list. Now, this is just my opinion based off the elo that I play in. Some of these may be C tier for you, maybe a champion that's B tier, maybe C tier for you and the way you play matchups, or maybe you don't have the experience with Orianna to deal with these lanes. But keep in mind, guys, my little note on the side, you don't play all these matchups the same. So maybe if you had this certain way of playing Orianna, maybe a lot of these matchups that are A tier actually drop to C tier because of the way you're actually playing Orianna in these matchups. So it will come with time, understanding the matchups. I just feel like if you are like an Orianna god, this is basically how it pans out if you're playing at a higher elo. So I just circled a few here to highlight. The reason Orianna is extremely good against Vladimir and people always struggle against Vlad is because they don't understand that, yes, you may not be able to punish Vladimir in the early game. But if you play patient, you value your farm, you get to your lost chapter without any chaos happening, which is extremely easy to do because Vlad has very little engage, very little threat, because he requires a lot of items as well, and very little wave clear. You get free bases, you get a free early laning phase, you get to your lost chapter. Not only do you incredibly outrange Vladimir, he has nowhere to close the gap, so you can just keep him at a distance. You get to your lost chapter, you just pump him. It's a complete stomp, which is S tier, which means it's S tier. Then we've got A tier matchups like Ryze or Cassio, where you have that range advantage. As long as you value your farm, you're farming incredibly well, you get to your lost chapter, you just outrange these champions too hard, you can just absolutely pump them. Then you've got the B tier, which I would say a 50-50, but really depend on how the game gets played out. I highlighted Kassadin here because Kassadin, some games, feels incredibly good for Orianna because maybe their jungler is a farm jungler, you're able to isolate the lane, you get to your free lost chapter with a null magic mantle, you just pump Kassadin because you can keep him out of range. He can never rift walk onto you without losing the trade. He can't get in range for his abilities, and he has to basically CS with Q. So I find this personally a good matchup. But if for some reason Kassadin is able to get an early kill, you mess up your early lane, you die to a gank, then that can just completely snowball out of control. Then you've got the C tier. I personally think that Rumble is even D tier in high elo, but given that this is, I would say, more maybe like a Diamond 1 Master tier list, Rumble really depends on the person you're versing. The reason I think it's unfavorable is because Rumble can just ignore your damage in the early game. He can just push and reset whenever he wants. He can push and roam. You can't do anything about it. The game just gets played too fast for you to handle, essentially. So Rumble can do whatever he wants. And then you've got the really annoying matchups. These are the ones where they can basically prevent you from taking your short, bursty 100-0 trades, where you want to poke them and not take any damage. It's very hard to do it against any of these champions because they can just all in you whenever they want. They can close the gap incredibly easy. They can play the game too fast for Orianna. So you're not going to be able to get to your power spikes. You're going to get poor bases. You're going to get zoned, maybe lose a bunch of CS, and then you're not going to be useful to anyone in the game. So if you have any questions about these matchups, feel free to drop me a comment or in the Discord or whatever. But this is basically my take on things. Now, we've got a few differing ways to play early lanes as Orianna. We got number one here, which is the hard shove, the wave with Q. I like doing this against champs with high CDs that really don't deal well with getting shoved in, like a Nivea, Xerath, Victor, etc. This allows you to exert a lot of control on the lane, prevent them from using their poke onto you. Very similar to the way I dealt with champions like Vel'Koz, Xerath, Asgalio. Very similar. Then you've got the slow push and poke. This is versus very weak levels 1 to 3 champions where you can just slow build a wave, poke them under tower. I'll go over an example of this in my video today. Then we've got the 3, hold wave in the middle and use Q on the opponent. Now, this is the most common one you'll find. This is versus any champion that has low-ish cooldowns. You can't slow build. You can't hard shove because they just poke you too much. This is basically where Orianna thrives. This is where the attack speed actually comes into play because you can thin the wave with your auto attacks. You're not going to be reliant on your Q for thinning the wave. So this is versus champions like Cassio, Syndra, Zoe. A lot of poke, a lot of early cooldowns, short cooldowns. Is the bread and butter way to play each laning phase. And then you got 4, respect and get pushed in. This is versus the hard counters where early game you can't do anything. They can just all in you. You got to just get shoved onto tower, fully respect, minimized until you get 1 or 2 items, like maybe your Lost Chapter or your Seekers, something like that. But they're the very hard matchup, so you really want to just get pushed in. Now, my take on Orianna's identity. So first of all, we got thrives against low range, low threat champions. This is because obviously one of Orianna's biggest strengths is her range. And if the enemy doesn't have much engage or they're very, very low threat, very linear, they can't close that gap, Orianna thrives because she can just sit back, throw her ball out, leave it there. And what are they going to do? How are they going to get past it? They can't get onto me. They have low threat. They have low engage. It's incredibly easy for me to take my 100 to 0 short bursty trades, utilize my range. Prefers a slower paced game where she can reach key spikes. This is incredibly important because Orianna is so reliant on the key spikes, whether it's your Lost Chapter, your Ludens or your GLP, things like that. If the game gets played too fast, maybe you're versing a Rumble, they're diving sides at like level 6, you're going to be compensating, you're going to be losing CS, the game just doesn't allow you to get to your spikes, which is not good. Then doesn't operate well in early river skirmishes. This is because her kit doesn't offer much. She has no hard CC, she has very little gank setup, her early mana costs are through the roof, her damage in general is just incredibly low, her early river skirmishes are not good. Prefers to isolate the 1v1 and prefers to avoid 2v2s and roam plays because she can't roam very well, because she doesn't have good gank setup, because she doesn't have any hard CC. She's not the best 2v2 champion. She's not the best at roaming, so she prefers to utilize her range advantage, take those small short trades, isolate the lane in a 1v1 with plenty of vision, and lock the person in the lane where Orianna 1v1 in most isolated matchups can slowly win out, but if the junglers are involved, it's going to be played too fast for you. So a lot of the time you want to avoid 2v2s, but not completely. Once you get to your spikes, you can 2v2, which we'll get to that. Thrives with short burst trades or 100 to 0 trades. And what I mean by that, again, is short bursty trades where maybe I've got my ball out in the lane, I'm moving it with a QWE, proc my phase rush, run away. Where I'm taking maybe 20 or 30% of their HP and they're not taking any of mine. And again, the reason for this is because I want to drag out the laning phase. I want to value my CS. I don't want to be blowing my flash. I'm immobile. I don't want to be basing all the time because it's going to be harder for me to get to my key spikes. I don't want to be heavy trading because that's going to encourage junglers to come to the lane, create chaos, more skirmishes, more jungle 2v2s, which is not what Orianna wants. Orianna really wants to avoid burning flash because she's incredibly volatile. Without flash, she has basically no self-peel. Wants front-to-back team fights behind frontline because, again, she doesn't want close range fights. She wants to abuse her range advantage. She doesn't have much self-peel, so she really thrives behind frontline. Likes to be at objectives first, because if you get to an objective first, it's a lot easier to control zones, and because you know where they're going to walk in from. Whereas if you're walking into an objective later, they could be camping on sides, they could be flanking you. You just become extremely vulnerable. So getting to the area first is very, very nice. She doesn't like the side lane because her side laning is incredibly bad, so she wants to keep that tier 1 alive, tier 1 tower, and she needs blue. Okay? She needs blue buff. She's probably one of the most blue-reliant champions in the entire game, unfortunately. Now, the mindset with Orianna. Orianna cannot be played with a compensation mindset. You have to be a carry as Orianna. You can't be like, oh, you know what, it's okay, I'm going to miss this wave so I can just help you guys bot. Or, you know, it's okay, jungler, you can take blue buff, it's all good. Or you can't have this very compensation bitch mindset, essentially, where you're just giving everything, you're compensating for enemy teammates. You have to be very decisive. You'd be like, you know what, guys, I'm the carry. I need my CS. I need my key spikes. Play around me. You can't have a compensation mindset. Patience is the name of the game in a lot of matchups because, again, if you play too fast, for example, this is actually probably one of the biggest mistakes I see with Orianna players because they play a matchup like maybe they play Orianna versus Fizz, or Orianna versus Kassadin, or Orianna versus Vlad. They feel like they have to do so much in the first, like, 5 minutes of the game. They feel like they have to win lane, levels 1 to 6, because they're versing someone who scales in their mind or whatever. But they don't realize that if you just farm to Lost Chapter, you farm to your first spike, you just pump these champions. So take a back seat, chill a little bit. Patience is the name of the game in a lot of matchups. And third one here, we got need to be played like walking a tightrope. So this analogy suits Orianna perfectly. If you play, so imagine like a tightrope, right? Maybe you're in a circus, you're all the crowd below. On one side of the tightrope, maybe you're leaning too far to the left, you fall off, which means maybe on the left-hand side, you're playing too defensive, which means that the enemy can just roam. You're playing too defensive. The enemy can roam. They can push you in. They're going to invade your jungler. They're going to dive your side lanes. It's a really quick way to lose the game because you're playing too defensive. On the other hand, you lean to the right-hand side, you also lose because you're playing too aggressive. You're heavy trading, you're not taking 100-0 trades, you're blowing flashes, you're promoting 2v2 skirmishes, you're just dying to ganks, the game gets played too fast, you're not able to get to your spikes, you're not able to get to those team fights, and then you also lose. So it's a balance. You're on a tightrope. You don't want to play too defensive, but you don't want to play too aggressive. You've got to find that niche where you're playing aggressive enough to lock the person in the lane, but you're not playing so defensive that they can just freely roam. So it's a nice little thing, and that will come with time and experience with Orianna. The next, Orianna needs to value farm and XP. We spoke about that. Orianna needs to take control of a game. This is because she thrives when setting the pace of the game. Now, it's incredibly important. Say there's a dragon fight coming up, and maybe you have enough gold for Ludens, and maybe you're not sitting on any mana. Maybe you only have like 15% mana. You know that if that fight happens, you may give shutdowns, you may allow the enemy to get a bunch of kills, which is going to increase the pace of the game too much, or maybe you just know that fight is not good for you. Orianna is the type of champion where you need to call off plays. Say, no, I don't want this gank, or no, give the dragon, it's okay, play off me, let me set the pace of the game, play around me, and we will win the game. I can carry. That is the mindset that you have to be in, and be okay with calling off plays. You can't let the jungler dictate what you want. As a champion like Orianna, if you let the jungler dictate what happens in the game, you will get dragged into circumstances that do not benefit you at all. And then lastly here, we got Orianna constantly needs to be assessing threats. Now, because Orianna has no self-peel, is incredibly immobile, and really wants to keep people at range, you always need to be thinking about who are the key threats, where are they on the map, can they get on my ass, all these things. You always need to be assessing the key threats. That's what I always think about in mid-game. Now for something new that I haven't really put in any of my guides before, this is something that I call an item journey. Now, because I've already referred to this so many times in this video, is that Orianna is incredibly reliant on items, it's important to understand when you're strong and when you're weak. Now, I've actually color-coded this a little bit. So we've actually got orange here for being mediocre. You're not weak, you're not strong. We've got red. This is where, you're very weak. You're in a very bad spot. You haven't hit key spikes. You're not really going to be able to do too much. You just feel weak compared to everyone else in the game. Then you've got light green, where this lost chapter is. This is where you're quite strong, but you're not God mode yet. You've hit a spike, but you can still do things, but you're not useless. And then you've actually got the God mode. This is where these two dark greens, Rabadon's here, or like your third item, and this is where you hit your Ludens or GLP. Now, something to note, post first base here, where you're getting a Doran's or an Amplifying Tomb, you're so useless. Like, you don't have blue buff at this point of the game. You lose most trades 1v1 at this point. You're very vulnerable. It's a very bad time. Like, you don't have enough threat to scare the opponent. They can just walk past your Q. But as soon as you get Lost Chapter, your QW poke does enough to scare the opponent, to create space, to give you a bit of threat in lane. Then you get to your Ludens and your GLP. This is where you hit God mode. You're very, very strong. And this is where you can actually start reliably 2v2ing. Because you have enough burst. But before this, you don't really have enough burst to reliably 2v2. Then it goes down a little bit as you're getting your Oblivion Orb, and especially when you're building it, it feels quite bad. You go back up again once you get 2 items, but this is where, crap hits the fan. This is where, this bit in between here, where you're going from 2nd to 3rd item, at this point in the game, it's incredibly hard to get farm, because Orianna doesn't collect side lane farm very well. Maybe everyone's grouping, team fighting, your farm is actually slowed down. This trough in between 2nd and 3rd item here, I mean, it feels so bad, man. Like, it's just really, really bad. So ideally, what you want to be doing is minimizing or trying to get from 2 to 3 items as fast as you can, or even just trying to end the game at 2 items. Because once you start having to build things like Seekers and Blasting Wands and needlessly large rods in between that little area there, because it depends what your 3rd item is, it just feels really like you don't feel strong anymore. You don't feel strong comparatively to everyone else in the game. But if that actually makes sense though, because if you get a shutdown, say you're at 2 items and you somehow get a shutdown, why randomly Orianna feels so strong? This is why. Because if you get this 3rd item, you turn into God mode. You just basically win the game anyway. So this is just my experience with Orianna, and it is incredibly important to understand. Don't just think that if you get to Ludens, you're going to feel this strong forever. You still have these dips, you have these troughs and mountains, or whatever you call them, peaks and troughs throughout the entire game. It will change, and note guys, this item journey will change depending on your item build, depending on the pace of the game, things like that. It's just, the reason I wanted to do this is because to get your creative juices flowing, to get you thinking about Orianna in this way, okay? So it will be different for all of you. Have a play around with it. Get thinking about it when you are playing Orianna, and when you're looking at your review, you'll be thinking, why did I feel strong here and weak then? Maybe I shouldn't have taken that skirmish, or maybe I should have valued that base, knowing that if I do get my 2nd item, I will be absolutely popping. So it's just something to think about. I thought it'd be a nice little addition to the guide. Now for Orianna Micro, guys, I had someone in the Discord ask me, Curtis, can you cover the key micro details for a champion when you're doing a guide? So I thought it'd be a nice little addition to this one. Firstly, you need to use self-cast when you're using your E, because Orianna is quite micro intensive in mid-game, and all your attention is just going to be completely focused, and your cursor is going to be completely focused on changing that position of the ball in mid-game for that team fight, for that skirmish. You're not going to have time to move your cursor to your character to put your E onto you. So I highly recommend getting used to using self-cast. It's incredibly efficient and allows you to always direct your attention with your cursor to where you want the Q to be, rather than moving it onto you for your E. I recommend smart casting all abilities, because again, there's so many, like your cooldowns are so low in mid game. I just don't think it's reliable to use smart cast in mid game without wasting too much time. Like, time with your ball placement is very, very important. Ball grants vision, great to check bushes, something to keep in mind. Remember that R pulls the champion on the opposite side for where they're standing. So if you put the ball on one side of them, it will flip them to the other side. So go and practice tool, try this out, get a feel for it. It is very important to understand for gank setup. Pulling E through minions also does damage, so it's helpful for CSing. In practice tool, get used to the R radius. Now, it will be bigger than you think. So what I recommend, go into practice tool, get a dummy, and then actually practice getting the ball, like putting it on one side and gradually moving the ball further and further away from the dummy, so you know what that radius is, and get used to it. Like, knowing that radius is incredibly important, because in a team fight, if you're hesitant on using it when it would have actually pulled them in, it's the difference between losing a fight or winning a fight, because your ultimate is such an important ability. Lastly here, we got must understand the max range of Q, because this is your bread and butter trading ability. Because Orianna's greatest strength is her range, if you're not confidently abusing Orianna's range advantage, you're basically missing the point of the champion. You need to be incredibly confident. So again, go and practice tool, put your Q, stand in the river, put your Q at max range, and then practice. Okay, with Smartcast on, what is the max range? Where can I stand while still not having to move my character and moving the Q? You need to know that range incredibly well. I just got a little graph here quickly explaining the effectiveness of Orianna at differing elos. As you can see, she's not amazing, but she's not terrible at any elo. Silver, platinum, diamond, you can see is quite consistent. I'd say there's quite a little bit of a spike at gold, purely because I don't think the laners are good enough to punish Orianna's weaknesses in laning phase. So games get extended out. Orianna scales very well. It gets to those team fights. I just feel like in gold, Orianna can really achieve her identity quite well, fulfill her identity. But as the game gets towards D1+, this is where Orianna tapers off a little bit, because the game just basically gets played too fast for Orianna. She can't get to her spike. She starts versing champions like Nocturne mid and Galio mid with way too much threat, way too much roam threat. You can't really do anything. So for most of you, it'll be completely fine. But if you are D1+, I don't really recommend Orianna. Now for the biggest mistakes and biggest misconceptions about Orianna. Now the biggest mistake I see with Orianna is that Orianna gets played too fast. So people get caught up with how awesome the poke feels. So Orianna obviously has one of the most reliable and easy to execute forms of poke in the entire game. Her Q can be all the way deep in the lane. You can move it left to right. QW, boom. Really, really solid trade. But what happens, you feel how good that feels, and then you're like, wait, I just QW again, and I'm going to QW one more time. Before you know it, you've used 3 QWs, you're completely and then you're screwed. You can't reset, you can't shove out the wave, you lose skirmishes, you can't set up ganks. You can't do anything. You're just screwed. So that is a massive problem I see with Orianna's. The next one is because Orianna is incredibly volatile, no mobility. She really needs to be conscious of not just jungle ganks, but support roams. So the higher elo you get, especially in Diamond Plus, you'll verse champions like Pyke, Alistair, Bard, Leona, these champions, a lot more aggressive champions, and they will come mid because they know that you are a champion that is very immobile, and they'll look to punish you. So keep that in mind. The next one is they don't play aggressive enough, so they just allow the enemy to roam. This ties back to that walking the tightrope analogy. They play so defensive because they're so caught up in the mindset where I'm a scaling champion. I can only fight at my Lost Chapter, or I can only fight at my Ludens. Yes, you are weak, but it doesn't mean you give complete pressure. It doesn't mean you sit on full mana and just catch waves under tower. You have to exert some level of pressure or trade at least a little bit so you can prevent the enemy from getting free roams. Okay, so don't play so defensive that the enemy just free roams. That's a massive problem I see with Orianna's. Now for the big misconceptions. Orianna actually doesn't scale well if she gets behind. If Orianna dies maybe twice in the early game, there's actually no point in the game where Orianna will be strong. Right? It's just the way it is. Orianna will not ever, because by the time she gets her Ludens, the enemy will have like Ludens and another item. Or by the time you get 2 items, people have 3 or 4 items. You'll be so far behind that you basically never get back into the game. You never scale. So don't be in the mindset where if I die, oh, it's okay if I die once or twice, I still scale. No, you actually just don't scale if you get behind in the early game. Orianna also doesn't scale well versus high threat team comps. Just because I play perfectly, maybe I farm amazingly, I get my Ludens, whatever, beautiful, but maybe I'm versing like an incredibly high threatening comp. Maybe I'm versing like Kled with like Nocturne, like Kled, Nocturne, Galio with like Zyra Khan. Doesn't matter how well I farm, I will not be useful in that game because there would be too many places for me to put my ball. I can't get my ball off. I can't take my short trades. I can't get my burst off. I'm never going to be able to operate as a champion. So this is something to think about. And also, if you are versing high threat team comps, you're basically always going to be having to build defensive items 2-3. You might even have to get like Banshees and Zhonya's or something like that, even though that's quite rare. But even Ludens into Zhonya's or even Zhonya's first item. And at that point, you actually don't scale that well because you haven't opted in for your key items. You've had to opt in for these a lot more niche defensive items, which significantly hurt the amount of burst that you're going to be able to do in the game. And then lastly, Orianna doesn't always play the lane slow, which is a big misconception. Like, you can play the lane fast. Like, the way I play Orianna a lot of the time is I go Corrupting Pot, I go Time Warp Tonic, I don't trade super slow. I've got Corrupting Pot, I can take decent trades, I go back for an early Dark Seal and an Amplifying Tomb, I come back and I play it a little bit faster knowing that I'm going to base soon for Lost Chapter. You don't just have to sit under tower and only take perfect trades. You can, exert a little bit of aggression, exert a little pressure, do a little bit of heavy trading knowing that you have Corrupting Pot or Time Warp Tonic. she can adapt based off the runes that you do take. Now for jungle combos, guys. So I thought it'd be a really good addition to this guide to talk about which junglers do very well with Orianna and why, and which junglers don't do well with Orianna and why. So just kicking it off, the junglers that I feel operate very well with Orianna, but obviously keeping in mind micro interactions, which we'll get to later on, are champions that have decent river control and aren't too scale oriented. So champions like Rek'Sai, Jarvan, Lee Sin, Orianna, all of these are good because they're quite strong in the early game. They get a considerable amount of river control. And what I mean by that is that, say you have Olaf versus Sejuani or Lee Sin versus Zac, they're going to be able to control pinks in the river. The enemy's not going to be able to walk into river too much because they're going to be scared. They can basically always see where Zac is going to be or where Sejuani is going to be, which means that you're going to be able to isolate your lane in a 1v1, which means you're going to be able to get to your key item spikes without anything too crazy happening in the game. So river control, really, really good for Orianna. Now, secondly, if you have scale-oriented junglers like Zac, Sejuani, basically what happens if you're versing a Olaf or a Lee Sin and they're just going to invade your jungler, you don't want to back them up. You lose 2v2 early, so you can't really offer anything for them. So if you got a scaling mid laner with a scaling jungler, it's just too much scaling. You give way too much pressure away. Your jungler's just going to get invaded. You can't help him. More 2v2s are going to get forced because your jungler's just going to get destroyed, which basically prevents you from playing your game. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is that damage spread. Orianna is very good with AD junglers. So if you have an AP jungler like Elise with Orianna, they can just stack MR so easily. They can get Merc Treads, it's super annoying, things like that. Or even like Hex Drinker if you're versing an assassin, very, very annoying. But if you've got an AD jungler that do a considerable amount of AD damage, they're no way going to be looking to build MR in the early game, which definitely helps Orianna's damage output. And then lastly, micro interactions. Now, Rek'Sai, all these champions have considerable ways to actually utilize Orianna's kit. So if we think about Rek'Sai can actually go in, knock up, which gives Orianna the time to use her combo, her ultimate, get the chunk off before they can even flash. Jarvan, the exact same thing, can lock them in a Cataclysm, especially if they don't have flash, and then ultimate and use your combo to get that burst off. Lee Sin as well, you can put the ball onto Lee Sin, then he can W or Q onto them, then allows Orianna to get the ultimate off. And then Olaf as well, you can just E him, W him, increase his movement speed, and again, he just turns into an absolute beast. All of these champions synergize very well, even at a micro level with Orianna. The reason I don't have I have Gragas here, even though he's not really a scaling jungler and has decent early game, is because the micro interactions. Gragas throws his cask in, spreads everyone out, and makes it incredibly hard for Orianna to position her ball or get ultimates off. So this champion actually makes it very hard for Orianna to get her her abilities off. So this is why I don't like Gragas. And Lee Sin, I mean, Elise can be decent because it is early game, but I just don't like the damage spread. The damage spread element of it doesn't make too much sense with Elise for me personally, even though it's not the worst. When behind, guys, so Orianna actually has this unique passive that Riot didn't even release. It's called Hibernation Mode. So there are a few champions in the game that can do this, but I feel like Orianna really thrives at it. So let's just say that you die once in the early game, not twice or 3 times, because if you die twice or 3 times, then you're basically out of the game anyway. But let's just say you die once. Because Orianna has such high range and her Q mana cost is so low, she can farm safer and more consistently than like basically any champion in the game. You can just put your Q deep in the lane, move it side to side, maybe pick up CS with your W or your E as you drag it back to you. There is so many ways to just get farm, safely hold the tower because of your low mana cost as well. You can just sit there forever. But before you know it, you'll be farming, getting your Lost Chapter, farm, Ludens, farm, Oblivion Orb. Before you know it, you're going to be at your key spike, and you're going to be strong again. Not many champions can actually soak farm and get farm back and get back into the game because they have to get so close range, or they can't farm from a distance, or maybe a champion like Lux or Xerath, they'll just go if they do that. Or they'll miss too much CS because they AoE the whole minion wave. Whereas Orianna can literally be, you know, I'm going to get that one. I'm going to get that one. Just move it very, very slightly. You're not going to be AoEing it too much. You can thin the wave very nicely. Your low mana cost. Really, really nice, unique passive with Orianna that I call Hibernation Mode. So moving on, we got how to counter Orianna. This is another new addition to my guide here. So just quickly covering a few things. Orianna hates multi-threat comps. So champions that can actually flank or come from differing angles are absolute worst nightmares for Orianna. This is all because of ball placement. If you think about it, if you've got Camille coming from one side and then Shaco invisible and then the rest of the team comp here, where do I put my ball? Do I keep it on me? Do I put it this side to peel off Camille? Do I put it this side to win the team fight? What do I do? You don't know where to put your ball. So this is why flankers or people that can come in from the side make it incredibly hard for Orianna. There's like Shaco, Camille, Fizz, Echo, all these champions, very, very annoying. Orianna also really hates it when early skirmishes break out. So maybe you've got a Zac jungle who's getting invaded by a Lee Sin. It's just so annoying. You're like, man, what am I going to do? Just go away. I just want to farm. Like, you know, that type of thing. You're going to have an existential crisis. So any of those early invades or early dives on the side lanes, maybe versing a Rumble mid, and they're just pushing you in. You're like, please, Rumble, please, just don't roam. I just want you to stay in mid. Just leave my bot lane alone. You know, that sort of thing. If that happens, you know, you're going to see this Orianna crying, and then they're not going to play Orianna again. And then, yeah, you're just never going to want to play Orianna again. So, not good. Orianna needs tier 1 mid lane tower to stay up. Again, this is an extremely painful experience. Maybe a versing 2v2 mid jungle that has a lot more early pressure. They get like Rift Herald on spawn. The jungle keeps coming mid and allowing the enemy mid laner to chunk your tower. Before you know it, you've based, they rift mid and they break mid tower. And you start walking to lane. And you're like, hello darkness, my old friend. And then you just look at mid tower and then it dies. And then what happens is that you're going to have to give so much pressure over to the enemy because they can shove you all the way to tier 2. Then they can go to then you're forced to the side lane eventually. You can't stall out the game. Then you're like versing a Fizz at like 15 minutes in the side lane. And then you just want to like, you know, it's just really, really bad. And then you've also got Orianna hates versing heavy trading mid laners like Echo, Aurelia, Galio, Diana. These are all champions that can basically prevent Orianna from playing the lane slow and utilizing her range advantage and slow burst trades. So think about it. Orianna wants to have the ball deep in the lane, move it side to side, and play these very short bursty trades. But then Galio is like, what the hell? What are you doing, man? And just like EWs you and forces this heavy trade. Or Diana just like QE ults you and chases you down. Or Aurelia just jumps to a minion and shoves a blade through you or whatever. Then you got like Echo just dives onto you, just completely can just gap close with the E. Like all these really annoying dive champions. This is what counters Orianna. Now, what we're going to do, I just want to quickly, this was actually from the FlyQuest versus TSM, I believe it was semi-final, one of the finals, and Power of Evil was actually playing Orianna. Now, before we get into the gameplay, I just want to quickly highlight, this is how you're talking about counters or what Orianna hates. I just wanted to put a little, this is like just to feel sorry for Power of Evil, how bad this would have felt as playing Orianna in this game. So, as you can see, we got Power of Evil down here in this corner. I believe they were on Baron, but they're looking to turn. What you can actually see, we've got TSM coming in from 2 angles. So already, given what I've said before in this video, we know that this is not what Orianna wants. And what's actually happened is that Ignar, look at Ignar on FlyQuest here, you can't really see, but he's actually ulted in and looking to W these 2 people over here. I believe that's the AD, who else is it? AD and someone. Now this, in his mind, I'm assuming that Power of Evil thinks that they're all over here. So it's going to be completely fine. They're all going to be coming from one angle. So it's really easy. He put his ball on the trundle here. Beautiful. They're all going to be coming from one direction. There's no need for him to move his ball. He can just keep it all in this one area. It's very easy for him to move his ball from like here to here or here to here. Then as we go to the next frame, Broken Blade, Biofrost, and Bjergsen are now coming in from the side. And Power of Evil's all the way up here. Now, Power of Evil, he's thinking, well, what do I do? Do I put my ball here? Do I move my ball here? Do I put it back on me? Are they just going to dive me? What do I do? You know, does Broken Blade have flash? Is he just going to flash on my face? I don't know what to do. This feels terrible. And you can already see in this position as Orianna, you're like, dude, man, come on. I'm either get like a 2-man ult here and, you know, then I get rinsed. Or I put a 3-man ult here, they flash over it and I get rinsed. Either way, you're just in such a bad spot because you don't know where to put the ball. And then as the next frame happens, Power of Evil, he Zhonya's, he has no idea what to do. He still hasn't used ultimate because, again, the enemy's not grouping up. They're coming in from different angles. He has to just insta use Zhonya's or his stopwatch, because he doesn't know where to put his ball. And then he ends up just getting one shot out off his Zhonya's. Of his stopwatch, sorry. So this is exactly why Orianna is not seen too often, why I don't think she's actually seen at the higher levels of play, especially in regions like, Korea and China like that. I mean, NA is quite trash. No offense to the NA viewers, but and even like C9's Ven was telling how bad FlyQuest were for like picking Orianna. It's just not a good champion. Just play aggressive stuff. But you can see this is the worst nightmare for Orianna when people are coming in from multiple angles and you don't know where to put your ball. So now we're actually going to get into more of the gameplay element. Again, that was very heavy. Make sure you go over little bits and pieces if you want more clarification. And if you need more clarification, feel free to message me in the comments below or within my Discord. Alright guys, so what we're going to do is dive into our first VOD of the day. This one being Orianna versus Cassio. Now, this VOD specifically, I believe, is very indicative of an average Orianna game at high elo. I play the early and mid game quite well. I make one or two mistakes, then the game kind of gets out of my control. I don't even play team fights that well, and I feel like it really highlights the strengths of Orianna and the weaknesses of Orianna and really what you do in each phase of the game. Now, this one specifically, this was quite high elo. I believe it was like, not super high elo, it was like Master Plus. We had like one Challenger player. This guy was like Master Tier. It was somewhat high elo, but I knew that because they had a Garen, a Nunu, and a Leona, I knew I had to have Phase Rush in order to reposition in fights. Especially in Nunu and high elo, they really know how to punish immobile mid laners, and especially this guy. I know this guy, he's a very, very aggressive Nunu player, loves to gank mid lane. So I definitely needed to opt in for Phase Rush, but more importantly, Phase Rush is very good into matchups where the enemy really want to chase you down. So if you're versing an Aurelia, an Echo, a Cassio, any of these champions that want long extended trades, Phase Rush kind of counters that because you just use your QWE combo, run away, or QW auto attack and run away. Cassio can't chase me down, and it's really hard for Cassio to proc her Phase Rush compared to mine because I just outrange her. So I thought it was a really nice choice, and then with my Phase Rush, I opted in for secondary inspiration with Boots and Time Warp Tonic because I know in high elo the games generally are a lot more heavy trading. So that's why I like Time Warp Tonic and Corrupting Pot. Now, quickly talking about how this lane is played out, if we refer back to my document where I talk about the 4 different ways to play lane, we had slow push, we had hard push, we had keep it in the middle, and we had get pushed in. Now, in this matchup, because Cassio is not low range, doesn't really have high cooldowns, but, not that strong early, I basically just kind of want to keep it in the middle, maybe slightly towards her, poke her slowly with my Q, consistently proc my mana flow band, and keep myself safe from ganks. That's essentially what I'll be doing so I can get to my key item spikes. Now, another little thing here, guys. Why is my ball already here? In a lot of these matchups, what I actually like to do is just Q level 1, get my ball out here, regen my mana before the minions even spawn. What this is going to do, it actually minimizes the distance this ball has to travel in order to proc my first mana flow band. Because think about it, if my ball's on me, it has to go from, say this is the location of Cassio, right, this dot. It has to go from me all the way to here, or it has to go already halfway through the lane to here. Like, this distance is shorter, so it's a lot easier. The shorter the distance, the easier and more reliable it will be to actually hit that Q. That's something I'm thinking about. Now, why do I auto-attack one minion? Now, again, because I don't really want Cassio to push me in, and ideally, I want to CS all these minions, auto-attacking one minion makes it a lot more obvious for me so I know which one is going to be low enough for me to auto-attack. Because you really want to minimize the amount of times you're using Q to CS. Ideally, you're actually using all of your Qs for poke, so keeping your ball out deep in the lane, and just auto-attacking for CS. But if all these minions are actually going to die at the same time, then I'm going to be more inclined to use my ball to actually CS, which means that I'm actually moving my ball less deep into the lane, closer to me, which makes it harder for me to reliably hit my Q on this Cassio. So ideally, I actually auto-attack one of them, make it really obvious as to which one's going to die, so I can just auto-attack them to death and not have to use my Q. So that's why I like to auto-attack one of the minions. So another little key, first thing you'll see in this laning phase is actually, before we get into it, I always get asked, Curtis, like they say, Curtis, what's the objective within this lane? Is there a certain gold amount? Like, what are you trying to do? Well, with Orianna, she's so flexible. There's no real key objective, overall objective. My main objective, if I were to put it succinctly, is get an efficient base. I can't tell how this guy's going to play the lane. I don't know how you as Orianna are going to play the lane. If I knew for some reason how they were going to play the lane, then yes, I could tell you what specific gold I want to be on. But because I don't know how this Cassio is going to play, I don't know how the junglers are going to path, I have to adapt. So the most important thing for me is, all I'm thinking is, as long as I can get an efficient base without missing any CS or any XP, I'm happy. Ideally, it's enough that I can afford 350 and then a pink ward, so what's that, 425? At least 425 for a Dark Seal and a pink ward, given that I've got Corrupting Pot. That even at that gold, I would be happy, as long as it's an efficient base where I don't have to use TP and I'm not missing any CS or XP. Now, you'll see in this laning phase, I always try to time my poke with CS. So notice when I'm simultaneously looking at my minions to see how low they are, so I can auto attack them with my own auto attack, and more importantly, time my Q with them walking up to CS my minions, these minions. So this is also the other benefit of getting the push. If you get the push in a lane, even if it's a slight push, the time in which both of you are going to be CSing is actually, it's just not going to be the case. His minions are going to die before mine, which means I can actually auto attack his minions and then focus all my attention on queuing Cassio. This is actually another reason why I slightly like to push into a lot of these low cooldowns matchups like Zoe, Cassio, Syndra, etc. Now, so obviously timing your Q when they walk up to CS is very, very important. It's a way to reliably get off your poke. Now, in terms of mana usage in my laning phase, I very rarely, like levels 2, 3, 4, I'm very rarely using my Q without having my mana flow, but because I do have Corrupting Pot, I can do it, and because Time Warp, I can keep my resources replenished. But as a principle, you ideally want to only be using your combos when your mana flow is up, and really trying to ration out your mana, because we know we want to get to, if we can get the higher amount of gold, the better, essentially, because we're going to have a longer laning phase, get to my Lost Chapter a lot easier. So I've got this slow push going on, really, really nice, waiting for Cassio to walk up a little bit, making it really hard for Cassio to CS without taking poke. We take a nice little trade here. I'm happy with that, because again, I have Corrupting Pot and he doesn't. Time Warp, so I out-sustain this guy in terms of HP. And I know that I have a range advantage, so I'm quite happy in this lane. So I use this as an opportunity to get some wards down, knowing that from 2 minutes 30 onwards, Nunu can be in the river looking to gank. So I get a ward on bot side here. I actually wasn't really sure what path Nunu was doing this game, unfortunately. So I just have one side to lean to. Now, I knew in this position, as Orianna, I'm versing a very threatening early game jungle. Like, Nunu at level 3 is so annoying. Like, he can zoom behind me, ball me, he can chain CC with W, and then I'm screwed. So I always have to blow flash, and again, Orianna doesn't want to blow flash. So I was thinking in this moment, you know what? Yes, I have the push. I've maybe pushed a little too fast. I don't feel comfortable poking this guy under tower, and I don't really want the lane here. So I was actually thinking to myself in this moment, Curtis, yes, you have vision down, but still you're not safe. So what I actually thought was, I actually wanted to hard crash this wave in, but Cassio started spamming abilities on the wave and started pushing it out to me. And I knew this because by counting the minions, I'm like, wait, Cassio actually has more minions than me, so she's pushing towards me, and I was happy with that. So I actually let the wave come out to me a little bit here, which was all good. So it's just another little point here, guys. You can see how important having intention with your wave is, specifically for Orianna. Because Orianna is an immobile mage, you always want to be thinking, okay, cool, they have a Kayn, and I have a jungle Lee Sin who's in the river, and I don't really need to be scared of ganks, and I'm versing maybe a Fizz or whatever champion or Cassio, then I would probably play this a lot more aggressive, because I maybe might not even have Phase Rush, I might have Airy, I could probably lean to one side quite safely, but because I'm versing a Nunu, and again, this guy is a bit of a psycho Nunu, this guy specifically, I wasn't confident in poking this guy under tower, so I adapted. And I thought to myself, okay, well, if I can't poke him under tower, what's my next best play? Alright, keep it in the middle, because if I can keep it in the middle, or maybe slightly on my side, Cassio is going to be vulnerable to ganks, and I can just safely farm without having to blow my flash. So you've always got to think about where do you want the wave as Orianna. Very important. So I'm letting the wave come to me a little bit, leaning onto the side of my vision, not knowing where Nunu's path is, unfortunately. And again, look at that. I'm timing my Q as this minion gets low. Look at that. I know all these minions are targeting this one, so I walk up simultaneously as Cassio goes to E that minion. Look at that, bang. It's a nice little way to get my combo off. And look at that. I get my phase rush. So this is actually a perfect example of why phase rush is good in this matchup. So Cassio E's, sees me walking up and decides to Q me as well. So she E's this, Qs me, gets the movement speed, and if I didn't have phase rush, she might have actually been able to get a somewhat trade, because she would have phase rush herself, do QEE, chase me down a little bit. But look at this. I use QW, E through her, get my phase rush, she can't chase me. So it's just a nice little way to get trades off, and this is why phase rush, I really like it as well. So I've got the wave in a good spot. She's playing very aggressively. I'm like, all right, fine. I'm happy to take these aggressive trades. My jungler's in the area. We're able to go onto her, and we're able to get that kill. So I flash, tried to get that last Q or auto attack, but we didn't even need to. She was just dead, unfortunately. But I didn't know Rek'Sai would hit the Q, so I was going to secure the kill with my Q off the back end. But just in case Rek'Sai missed his, is it Prey Seeker? Whatever it is. Now, something to think here. Something Cassio, I mean, this is what Cassio was thinking in this moment was like, holy crap, I want my wave in. I don't want the wave stuck on Orianna's side. So she's decided to fully commit, bully me off the wave so she can get the wave in. But I stood my ground. I actually walked at her. I wanted to bait her in, knowing that my jungler was in the area. And this is where jungle awareness comes into play. So this is, you can just see, Cassio and Orianna are two extremely immobile mid-majors. And if you don't have intention if you don't have jungle awareness, you don't have jungle tracking, you don't have wave manipulation, you will be getting yourself into a whole host of trouble. Now, anyway, both of us blew flash. So me and Cassio both blew flash, which isn't good for either of us. So it is a little bit awkward in that sense. But we'll see how that kind of pans out. Because for me, I'm very vulnerable to Nunu now, and Cassio is also very vulnerable to Rek'Sai. So I'm just chilling. Right now, what I was actually expecting was Cassio just to TP back in the lane. Because she wasn't immediately TPing me, because she was scared Rek'Sai was in the area again. And then Nunu shows bot here. She didn't end up TPing, or does she TP? Let's see. So I'm just chilling here. I could have insta-reset in hindsight. Like right now, I could have just insta-reset. But I was just thinking to myself, if I just insta-reset here, Cassio is just going to TP, and I'm just going to have to match TP anyway. So what I thought was, why not maximize the amount of gold I'm going to base with TP? Because now I'm going to, if I stay for a little bit longer, I'll be able to afford amplifying 2 pink and a dark seal, not just a dark seal and a pink. So I stay for a little bit here, thinking that she was just going to TP back. I believe she just walks back. So I just get the wave in as much as I can. And then I just recall. So unfortunately, I didn't get the 1300 gold, but that's completely fine. So what's my backup option? Dark Seal, Amplifying Tomb, and a pink. I love this buy. It's one of my favorite buys. And it feels so nice with my my Corrupting Pot. So anyway, Nunu showed bot before. I don't know where he is anymore, because Nunu can just do such weird pathing. And I know that I have no flash, so I really try to get my warding out. And again, this is a great tip for Orianna. Whenever you're going into lane, try and ward first. Because Orianna wants to isolate the lane. I want to go for trades knowing that I'm completely safe. So by warding first, I'm not going to put myself in any danger. I know I'm very vulnerable. This is basically going to allow me to have a side to lean on and take the trades that I want to take. Now, this is where things get very, very interesting, okay, guys? What do we see here? My jungler's on Krugs. I have no information about Nunu. So I have to be very careful with the way I want to play this lane right now. Notice how defensive I'm playing. Yes, I win this 1v1 trade. I actually win trades right now. But if I walk up aggressively and try to get this wave in, Nunu could just come zooming in and kill me. Notice how my mind is always thinking about threat. I'm always thinking about threat. If I'm versing a Kayn or a Grace or a Kindred, I'll play this completely different. I'll play a lot more aggressive. I can just safe lane here. I can take aggressive trades. I'm all good. I can easily get this wave in. But because I'm versing a Nunu, I need to be very careful, okay? So as Orianna, you need to value your life extremely high. I know that I'm an immobile mage. Junglers will focus you. You need to play in accordance with your jungler's location. If my jungler was hovering me right here, then it's fine. I could probably play aggressive because we can just counter gank. It's completely fine. But I don't feel comfortable with walking up, and I'm playing very carefully knowing my jungler's not in the area. So if I were to die right now, for example, let's just say I die right now, I'm going to come back. I'm going to have I'm just going to delay my spike incredibly. It's going to take me so long to get Lost Chapter. Cassio's going to get free farm. She's going to get items above me. And then it's going to be so hard for me to win my lane. And then I'm just out of the game. Like, you can't afford to die as Orianna, essentially. You really need to value your life. And my actions, they represent that. You know, the way I play the game. And this is how I climbed. Season 7, I got 1000 LP as a coach. I think it was season 7 or season 8. I got 1000 LP as a coach. And it's just from Orianna, because I just played macro. I just never died. Then, what happens? I see Nunu bot. And you'll notice how I start to actually change my gameplay. Look at this. So I see Nunu bot, and look at this. Then I start to walk up a lot more aggressive. I start to use my Q a lot more aggressive. So now I'm walking up a bit. Cassio is respecting a lot more. Now I'm positioning my Q aggressively, because this is ideally what I want. I want one Q over here. I throw my Q out, knowing that it probably won't hit. Because again, it's really hard. These max range Qs like this, when I'm covering this distance, are incredibly hard to hit. Then, from this point, this is where I can start to manipulate and move my ball from side to side, guaranteeing to hit my QW combo. So now I've got the Q out. I can play super aggressive, and this ball is generating threat. Having the ball, just leaving it there. That is how you play Orianna. You don't want to have the ball down here. You always want to have the ball deep in the lane. That is how, and know that max range. So that's how you generate threat on Orianna. Now, look how respectful Cassio is compared to how she was playing before. All because I'm just able to safely walk up and zone her. So a lot of kills are going on. Getting a little bit sketchy. I think my top laner actually dies. So now getting some nice trades off, slow poking this this Cassio, and now I know I have enough gold for Lost Chapter, so I can actually base for a Lost Chapter whenever I want. You can tell this Cassio is quite good. He's playing very aggressively around my ball, but not too bad. But I know that I'm in a very favorable position. My bot lane's resetting. I believe my jungler's just doing a full clear at the moment. I'm getting some really nice trades off with my phase rush. Beautiful. Still got 2 corrupting pots as well, leaning to my bot side towards where my vision is. Okay, something I want to show you here. So, a few things. If I incorrectly tether, okay, say you're very good at tethering, and you know this person doesn't have much threat, you can hold your ball out and leave it there. When you're versing champions that have gap closes and can just close that gap, you can't afford to just leave your ball here. What you actually need to do is short trades where you Q, W, you don't leave it there, you Q, W, and then you E, or you just instantly run back and pop the ball back to yourself, because obviously having the ball on you, it actually gives you a little bit of resistances. If we look at it here, so use my ball, let me get this drawing off my thing. So right now I have 46 MR with the ball, 46 MR and 39 armor. And then when I throw the ball out, I have 29 armor and 36 magic resist. So the ball on you not only gives you more resistances, but it actually allows you to reposition your ball for the second time round a lot easier. So it's just important to know that when you're versing champions with gap closes, you want to maximize the time the ball is on you rather than keeping it out. The only reason you keep it out is because you know they can't damage you, essentially. So again, that will take time to understand, and this is why knowing that max range, that Q range, is very, very important. Okay. So right now, I know that I have my Lost Chapter, so I know I should be basing very soon. So I'm trying to chunk this person, get a favorable base for me, knowing that Cassio actually has TP advantage. So I knew that I had to take a base very soon while I could, while I still have enough mana to get this wave out without being Because I know that because I don't have TP, if I use all my mana on this Cassio, I'm not going to have enough mana to get the wave. So as Orianna, you need to be using a lot of foresight and thinking, okay, I want Lost Chapter. If I want Lost Chapter, and if I make myself how the hell am I going to get a good reset without losing XP in CS? Because our value, remember, we're valuing in terms of our, what's dictating our decision making is always thinking about how can I get a very efficient base, okay? So right now I realize I don't have much mana. I only have 2 Corrupting Pot stacks. My team's kind of doing a full clear. Blue's coming up very soon. If I use all my mana on the wave right now, I can guarantee I get a really good base for myself. And then this is going to allow me to just base, get my Lost Chapter, force Cassio to rack to this wave. I get a really solid tempo base. I can come out, because Rek'Sai's doing a full clear anyway, get my Lost Chapter and come out and get blue after. So I'm very happy with this decision, knowing now that I've got my key spike working towards my GLP. Didn't need a pink because I've already got a pink, and unfortunately I didn't even have enough gold. But I come back to lane here. Get the wave in, nothing too special. Rek'Sai's just continuing to play to the side lane. So instead of holding the wave on my side or playing slow, I know that I need to just solo my blue buff. So what I do, I get the wave in and I start to solo my blue buff. Because I know blue buff is like, I mean, I don't know what even analogy is. It's just so important. I mean, you just need blue buff on Orianna. It's like, it's your bread and butter thing. If you don't have blue, you're done. All right, just give up. FF 15, move on. You need blue buff. So, get my blue buff, kite it out, come back to lane. Now, again, what am I doing? Even though I still have flash, I still want to conserve my flash. My jungler's lane ganking bot. I don't want to be heavy trading, using my QWE aggressively on this guy, knowing that I can't. Nunu can easily just loop around here and blow my flash. I don't want to blow my flash as Orianna, okay? So, I know that I have to play appropriately. My jungler's not hovering me. So I don't want to give too much pressure. I'm trying to walk that tightrope. I'm still trying to get poke off, but I got to be a little bit cognizant of my jungler's location. I don't know where Nunu is, but I know Rek'Sai is not near me to counter gank. And notice, this is a nice little juicy tip here, guys. When the wave is actually pushing towards you, if you have pink vision, Nunu's actually in river here. I see Nunu here, which is luckily because, again, if my wave was screwed, if I was pushing in, then I'd be in a bad spot. But another little tip here, as the wave is pushing into you, you can actually hold the ball out and zone them from pushing out the wave. Or force them to take a lot of damage while trying to go for the wave. So keep in mind that you always need to be finding ways to utilize your range advantage. And another thing that is with Orianna that you should be thinking about is you can do the fadeaway. You know, with Victor, you can do the fadeaway E. You can actually do fadeaway Qs with Orianna as well. Like that. Look at that. So I'm not only I've got the ball deep in my lane, I'm always looking at this little target here to know how, if it's red or orange, so I know that range, how it's going to flick back to me. But I know that if I keep it out there, Cassios are going to have to walk past the ball, and then I can do the fadeaway Q where I'm walking backwards and simultaneously moving the ball towards me. So it's like I'm creating the space and looking to get damage off at the same time. So this is all little micro details with Orianna you need to work on, like that. Fadeaway, boom. Mr. Q, unfortunately, this person's playing very well around it, knowing that Nunu has control. And notice now, when I don't have vision control in River, I am shit scared. Look at me, I don't know what to do. Like, I can't walk into River, I'm scared, I can't follow roams. And then Nunu walks bot, so then I start to follow, because now I can only follow knowing that Nunu's on vision, trying to spot out Cassio. And this is the weakness of Orianna. These fights in skirmishes and side lanes, I can't get to very well. I'm scared of river skirmishes, not what I want. Fight breaks out. I try to zone them away, but and try to defend the tower. I defend the tower a little bit, but this is all just not good for me because this is slowing down the pace of the game. I end up losing quite a bit of CS here. But we go on this Cassio. Bang, this is that micro interaction. He can chain CC. I flick him back. Look at this. Locks him down. I ultimate. Because it was on this side, it moves him back closer to the tower. Beautiful ult placement. And this is how the Rek'Sai Orianna micro combinations good, really good together. So he helps me get river control, and our 2v2 threats are not too bad at all. And especially once I get my GLP. So I get the wave in, beautiful, and end up greeting for a plate. Now, something to think about, when you're playing Orianna, obviously plates are very important because you're not a roam-centric champion, and gold is very important for Orianna. But keep in mind, if I'm versing an Echo or a Talon or something that can roam, I wouldn't sacrifice tempo for a plate. I would only do that. I'm only doing that because I'm versing a Cassio. Cassio's roaming is not that good, and I know she can't really roam too well. So the tempo doesn't mean too much. So I'm nearly up about 25 CS, not too bad. Got my GLP now. Now this is where I get really strong. Go to pink wall because I need to establish control because I want to isolate my lane, remember? Now I've got river control, so it's very nice for me. Now look at this. I got my GLP. I can just walk up, allow me to hit my QW, and this is where I can take such good trades. Loving it. use my pink here to one side. I think that's a little bit greedy. I probably should have used it in the dot bush, but then Nunu shows bot as well, so I know it's an isolated 1v1. I've got my TP. Beautiful. I can use my TP to counter gank. This is why I also love TP. It's so versatile. I don't use my ult straight away. This is another beautiful thing, guys. If you don't know whether this person has ult, a lot of the time they will panic. At the highest level, the Xayah shouldn't be using ultimate. She should react to the shockwave. You can actually see the kind of shockwave like wobble. But what you do is you actually use your QW. You don't use it straight away. You bait out the ability, and then you follow up with your Q ultimate or whatever. Because what actually happens here, what I was expecting was flash, R flash, and then I just Q after then the ultimate, you know? So if I just ultimate straight away, she just ultimates it, and I can't get my damage off. But here, Felios was helping me damage anyway, so get that kill. She nearly one-shots me. I have to both flash, and then we end up killing Leona. I didn't even need to ultimate there, but notice how this whole play, like I played it quite well micro-wise, but more importantly, it's just TP. This is one of the strengths of TP. It actually covers for one of my weaknesses of side lane roaming. That's just a nice little thing you can do with TP. Now my top lane is getting pumped because he's off autofill, so they've got a 3-0 Garen, which is an absolute nightmare for me as Orianna. But unfortunately, I had to blow flash, so, well, I didn't know if I needed to, but I did, which is very bad for me because, again, Orianna with no flash, I'm under extreme threat at the moment. So I moved my pink topside knowing that Rek'Sai is playing for that next objective, and I really want to make sure that no one's going to that fight, so I'm just pushing in mid, keeping it pushed in so Rek'Sai can just safely get that Rift Herald, and then I go into River knowing that if a fight breaks out, I'm going to be at the objective first. I can control these choke points extremely easy, and, you know, zone them from not even coming close to the Rift Herald, so I really, really like that. Get the Rift Herald, beautiful, come back mid. We rift mid. Here I actually make a little micro error. So I use my Q, and I was thinking that Rek'Sai was just going to jump in, follow on my ult, but my ult was bad. Look at this. This literally is the difference between getting this kill or not. If I use my ball, instead of here to here, I use it there to there, and then I ultimate, it actually flicks him here, which puts him in Rek'Sai's range. But look, I ult on the other side of Cassio, here, and flips him to here. So then Cassio's not in range. It's a lot harder, so we don't get that kill. And keep in mind that GLP does damage as well. So he nearly dies, but we end up missing out on that kill. All of these little micro details you can tell are literally the difference between getting kills and not getting kills. Okay? Very important to understand. So I try to get the tower. Cassio ends up TPing back. I go solo my blue buff. I come back to lane. But again, I don't have flash, so I'm scared. Whenever I don't see Nunu, I need to be very, very careful. Okay, now this was my throw. Oh man, this one hurts. This one hurts. Oh man, oh man, oh man. So, I was in my isolated 1v1, and I was like, I got my blue. Garen got top tower and was moving down. And then I saw Garen move down in river, right? Here. I saw Garen move down in river. I'm like, why is he moving down? Are they looking to like make a bot play? Because what this says to me, because I've watched so much competitive games, is that Garen is covering next mid wave, which means Cassio is roaming bot. So I'm like, oh my god, so Cassio's roaming bot. I want to follow Cassio. I want to find her to spot her out so she feels less inclined to roam. So what happens, I walk into this bush, even though this is so bad, and I get chased down. I try and turn for my GLP to slow, knowing that I'm probably going to die anyway, but then I just get stunned, and then I die. And this was so big. This one hurts. So I give a shutdown. I give my blue buff away. I think they actually get mid tower off it as well. One mistake booms the game. This actually boomed the game. I feel so bad. I'm like, oh, I was playing so well. That one mistake just cost me. So now I knew this game I was going to be in for a ride. I mean, that just started the roller coaster. I've strapped myself in. This is going to be fun. So now, because now what happens, that I've lost my tower, I'm under so much more threat from Nunu. Laning phase is now completely ended, and the game has just gone crazy at this point. So anyway, go back to a side lane, try and catch some farm. Fast forwarding a little bit, because again, knowing that you've got to be constantly aware, because if I just bitch it and don't get this side lane farm at all, I just fall way too far behind. I know that they're all mid, I know I can get this farm safely, but I don't want to stay in the side lane. Ideally, I want to be looking to group Because again, I'm so vulnerable, but more importantly, I can't really get done much by myself. So I get this tower, and then I instantly group. If I'm someone like Echo, I would probably go for that next wave. Just drawing on the minimap there. I would go for that next wave, but because I'm Cassio, I'm too vulnerable. I need to group. I have no flash. That's my strengths lie. I don't know what the hell this was. I swear that was a bug. What the hell was this? Why was there 2 balls? I have no idea what the hell that meant. But anyway, I think that was Nunu. I swear that was Nunu. Like, look at the way the ball was pathing. Whatever. Anyway, I come back mid and grouping because this is where Orianna's strengths lie. Being in a grouped front to back fight, utilizing my range advantage, being at the fight at the beginning. If a fight breaks out without me there, I'm not good at cleaning up at all. Orianna is not a cleanup champion. Orianna needs to be at the fight from the start. So I'm just grouping, and this is where you can set up picks. So I go here, I wait for her to walk away, then pull her in. Look at this. This is Orianna mastery, guys. So I use my ball, and instead of instantly ulting like most Oriannas will just panic, I know he's trying to get into position. I know that this person, if I use my ultimate now, it's just going to flick them away over here, and then it's going to run away. I wait for Orianna to run, and then suck them back in, which allows us to get the kills. So just little, that's just Orianna things, guys. Really, really nice. We do set up a nice siege, get the tower, beautiful. And I'm pinging Dragon. So I ping Dragon a minute away, guys. So unfortunately, 1400 gold allows me to get Morella Nomicon. I'm the only AP, so they're not building any MR. So I felt this was a really good game to just go Oblivion Orb. Now, what do we know about objectives with Orianna? Orianna wants to be at the objective first and wants the team to be there as a whole, front to back team fight, where no one's flanking. I want to be at the Dragon so we get the control. If we get to River first, we can control vision, control choke points. It's a lot easier. So I was trying to get my team. I even literally said, I want drag. I'm trying to tell my team, come. But unfortunately, I don't know what the hell Rek'Sai is doing, trying to get dob or something. I don't know. But I'm trying to tell my team. This is why I'm not going to the side lane. Cassio has the benefit of being able to push out the side lane, knowing that my jungler showed top side. If Rek'Sai was out of vision on bot side here, Cassio can't shove that bot wave out. Should be scared. So me, because I'm Cassio, I know that I need to be grouped in this area. I don't want to be coming in from the flank. I know I need to be with my team. I don't have time to go to this bot wave, collect the bot wave, regroup before the fight will either start or they'll take back this vision control. I want to maintain this vision control. So I literally sacrifice all this bot farm knowing that we need to be here. We need to control these chokes. We need to control this area. So again, I'm always thinking what is good for my identity as Orianna. I'm never compensating. Yes, this is bad for me. I lose a lot of farm. And I was actually dying inside a little bit at the moment. Because I was looking at, I end up panning my camera bot wave. Look at this. I pan my camera bot. I'm like, oh my god, look what I'm missing, you. Anyway, so I'm here, I'm controlling the chokes, knowing that this is the best way to get a front-to-back fight. And we force them to come into this wave, which means we get the shove off mid wave as well, so they lose a lot of farm mid as well off this. Now, this is the type of fight that Orianna does want, okay? So they're all front to back. I'm trying to poke them with my QW there, use my GLP to zone them a little bit, get some poke down. Unfortunately, though, they're just strong, and they just have so much threat. And then I miss my ultimate here. Okay, let's break this down. I want to talk about what you should be looking to do in these fights. Don't rush in. This takes time. It takes mastery. Don't rush in and straight away use your ultimate. The scariest Orianna ults, the best way to get reliably good Orianna ults, are the ones that require patience. The longer you hold on to this ultimate, the more scared these guys are going to be. They're going to panic. They're like, oh my god, Orianna's ball's here. He's not ulting. What am I going to do? I can't walk in. Ideally, if I was, I don't know why I didn't do it. If I just move my ball here, all I got to do is move it here. What this would do is this would create so much threat, they wouldn't be able to walk into pits, because this is too far. This won't actually, they can just walk through here, won't actually suck them in. So ideally I move it there, and then this will actually allow me to create so much threat, because your ball and it's the inherent threat or the perceived threat of you having ultimate that makes Orianna scary. It's not the ult itself, it's the when is she going to use it. That's what you want to bring about. So right now, because my ball placement is poor, I wasted my QW there getting poke rather than repositioning. This was a massive, I can't even explain how bad this is. As Orianna, if you're focused on Q poking rather than repositioning on Q for the grander scheme of the fight, you will lose the fight. This is literally why we lose this fight. Instead of doing that QW poke on Garen that does nothing, my attention should all be focused on generating threat and putting my ball in the best possible place for an ultimate. I knew that they were committing to the dragon. I know if I move my ball here, in hindsight, then they can't walk up to us. This will create so much space for Aphelios, and if they do, I can just ult them all. So it's such a good bet. Because I don't do it, now my Q's on cooldown, I can't move it. I have to wait for my Q cooldown, and then it's too late. The fight's already over. I hesitated too much. My ball placement was off, and we end up having to play this fight front to back. It ends up being not too bad. Like, we trade like 2 for 3 or whatever it is, but, you know, it could have been so much better if my ball placement. So this is something I would look at and review. For me, I'm usually so good at it. It's very uncharacteristic of me to miss my ultimate. But you can see how mastery comes into play, ball awareness, understanding how much time you have. And, just something to think about here. The lower this gets, the lower this dragon gets, the more anxious these guys are going to go to walk up. So if my ball is here when this is at this HP, it's much better. Like, if I put my ball here, they're just going to ignore it because, again, this is so high HP. They can maneuver around. They can just wait. They can play patient. But if my ball is in that position as the objective is very low, people panic. They're like, oh my god, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And it just creates more things to think about. Anyway, I think I've gone enough about that, but I think you get the point. There's a lot of macro fundamentals there. So now, farm for my Morellonomicon, swap to my Scryer's Bloom, because again, I need it to help me with threat. I go for my blue buff. I'm calling lane assignments, telling Aurelia to match this Garen, because I don't want to do it at all. Now, the game goes into a bit of a lull state. Now, just quickly talking about macro here, guys. Again, I'm a champion with no flash. I can't just go straight into the side lane. So what I want to do, just drawing the minimap here, I want to establish control in this area with pink wards maybe on the ramp a little bit. This is going to, and actually just literally group with my AD carry and support, allow them to get the push on the wave. Then we can walk in together, establish control. They can escort me to top lane where I can safely catch side lane waves. If I go to the side lane wave straight away without establishing control here, it can be very, very tricky. So I'm just trying to set up picks, trying to set up poke, nothing too special. Now that I've got a bit of control down river and they've all showed on mid and my junglers, like, they're kind of playing to top side a little bit, I can freely get this. But again, I don't want to stay in this wave. I don't want to stay in this lane. Ideally, I want to regroup. What actually happens, I see Cassio walk up here. So I was trying to get Rek'Sai to come hover me and we can maybe pick this guy in the side lane because I knew me and Rek'Sai's the micro interaction is really nice. But Rek'Sai was just slow in the head or something. Like, I don't know what he's doing. He didn't help me out, so we weren't able to get a pick on this Cassio. I get the side lane wave. Knowing what I want to do, I need to establish control. But for some reason, my AD carry went bot. So we lost all control on river, and this is what happens. If the AD carry goes bot, the enemy gets pushed on mid wave. They get full river control here, and then Orianna turns into just a bot. There's nothing I can do. When we don't have river control, I can't walk in anywhere. I can't phase check. I don't know where they're going to be coming from, so I can't place my ball and generate threat. I don't know where to place my ball. So it was so hard. So I just didn't know what to do. So I'm really trying to group mid here to establish some form of control. That's what I try to do in mid game. Catch one side wave, go back mid, establish control, extended siege, or group for a team fight, or again, get that control so they can escort me to the side lane. Either way, it's good. So I'm trying to pick up some side lane farm because they have no MR. I can go straight into Rabadon's death cap. If they had MR, I'd probably go Void Staff, but they had literally 0 MR. Maybe Merc Treads, but that's not enough. Group mid again, because again, this is how I'm going to get control. This is how we're going to get picks with me and in this area. And I thought this was a beautiful fight. Look at this. Look how good this fight is for Orianna. They're all in one area. I'm controlling the choke point. The only way they can get onto us and me and Aphelios is walk through here or here. Either way, my ball is going to cover it. It's so hard for Cassio to play this fight. Right? So I was so happy. I was like, yes, they're all there. Literally all 4 of them. Beautiful. So I'm like playing patiently. I'm trying to just quickly poke them. I'm really, really happy. I'm like, what are they doing? They can't run into my ball. If they run through here, I can just ult them. I can kill them. We can play this front to back team fight. But little do I know, I didn't actually see on the map at all. Garen, ages ago, had shoved in bot and was walking up behind me this whole time. And because he just popped out of vision. Now I don't know where he was. And I didn't know where Garen was at all. I thought this was a really good fight for us. Next minute, boom, Garen just goes on me and I just get one shot by Garen. And this is literally the perfect example of if you're not aware of side lane threats or people diving on you from the side. Look how bad this is. Where the hell do I put my ball now? Garen's just slicing my head off. And, you know, not really much I can do here, right? So avoid this at all costs. And this is why it's a best of both worlds. If Garen wasn't here, this would be a beautiful fight. All four of them here in this area, exactly what I want. I can control the choke points. But as soon as someone flanks me, uh-oh, someone's going to die. And then I just die. And, yeah, don't worry, guys. Aurelia, I'm coming. Aurelia, I'm coming, guys. Don't worry. Anyway, they get Baron off of it as well. We die even more. There comes the FFs. There comes the, this Korean. This guy's a Korean 80 carry saying, GG, can't win. Go. Why no dodge? Alright, whatever. Knowing that we can still win. You know, I'm playing Orianna. We can do a wombo. We can make a pick. Fast forwarding. Just trying to catch as much farm as I can. And notice I'm in that trough between 2 items and 3 items. It takes, as the game gets to this point in time, 25 minutes, it's really hard for me to generate enough farm, to get enough farm so I can get to my 3rd item. This is where Orianna gets into a lull state. Once I get to my Rabadons though, I absolutely pop. So I'm always pinging the amount of gold I needed. So I'm really trying to get to my Rabadons. Get my blue buff again. I'm always just grouping mid, not really going to a side lane because I know that I need to be with my team just in case the fight breaks out. I can't come to the team fight late. I need to just let my, get jungle camps whenever I can, catch midways whenever I can. We end up luckily getting a really nice pick. Again, that allows us to draw out the game. I see Garen, so I know that I have a bit of time to catch another side wave. I keep catching these side waves. My whole mindset is get to 3rd item. Farm, farm, farm as much as I can. Got my 2 nearly to large rods. Still in that trough, that power trough. I need to get to my Rabadons. So any form, I'm pinging my Rabadons, telling them how much gold it is. So I'm always trying to catch that, these side lane waves. I'm trying to get raptors. I'm trying to get wolves. I'm trying to get any bit of farm. Close, very, very, very close. Now, next fight. Look at this. Again, same thing. For some reason, I just keep forgetting Garen can just get onto me. So again, I all thought they were coming through here. I knew Cassio and Xayah were all going to be coming through this choke point. I'm like, dude, this is so good. This is another perfect fight for me. Choke points. I love this. Whenever I see this setup and I'm here, I love it. Because either way, I do ridiculous amounts of damage, or the 80 carry and the support, the mid laner, you leave your ball here, you start walking away a little bit, you go max range, tether your ball max range, then you ultimate, and you get a really big ultimate on the back line. So either way, it's good. Like they walk over my ball and they get chunked, or like we kite them. And then Garen just runs past me and they just destroy me again. And again, for some reason, I'm just not playing well around this Garen. He was able to just keep getting onto me. I just didn't think he could walk through Aurelia. Like I saw Rek'Sai and Aurelia here. I'm like, how can he just get onto me? I thought like he wouldn't be able to walk through there, but he just ignores them. I think Rek'Sai just dips over the wall and then walks past Aurelia and then just destroy me, staunch me. So you can see how much fun I'm having this game, guys. At your expense, everyone's just watching me, just laughing behind the computer screens. Like, Curtis, you are a piece of work on this Orianna. But resilience, name of the game. Patience, resilience. But now we get aced. We kill 3 of them, not too bad. I'm getting very close to my Rabadon, so I get out of base instantly, trying to get to my Rabadons, get the waves out, get my wave out, get my Rabadons, and telling my team, Dragons coming up in 40 seconds, telling my team, group mid, all group mid, come mid. We need to group mid as a team, walk into the river together, so we can take that structured 5v5 fight. Because I know that I want to contest this Dragon Soul. I want to get to the fight first, or at least get to the river first so we can control choke points. So it's a lot harder for Garen to flank me. Then I see Garen out of position. Like, what is he doing? Knowing that my ball, remember, flips him to the other side. Knowing that he didn't have flash from the previous fight. Boom, flash. And we end up chasing him. And Phelios gets the pick. Cassio TP's in. We end up being able to chase these guys down. get another kill here, I believe. Nice. I'm just using... Now I'm just playing Peel Orianna. Because after you use your ultimate, you just turn into a Peel bot. You just E your AD carry, who's really, really fed. This allows us to get the dragon. It allows us to get the Baron. Because that pick on... Or because my pick on Garen, not going to lie, my pick was pretty clean. Got that pick on Garen, allowed us to get the Baron, allowed us to get the Dragon, all ping out, beautiful. Now that I know we've got my Rabadons, working towards my Void Staff, I'm just telling team, Siege, come mid, free win. If we just Siege, is exactly what Orianna wants to do in the late game. And late game Orianna, at this point, you just want to Siege. So I come mid, just tell them this is exactly what we want to do. I can just E my AD carry, I can zone them. And look at this, is another thing here. Notice how I knew this guy was dead, so I'm already positioning my ball as a zone tool. Cassio's trying to like maybe come in, damage my front line, but I can actually zone this Cassio, but just by having the ball here. And this way, by not fully committing it over here, I can still move from there or to here. So you always got to be thinking in the future with your ball placement. You shouldn't just be thinking one-dimensionally. You got to be playing like 4D chess, essentially, with Orianna, if you want to effectively operate team fights. So we get that pick, and then we just push it down, and we just run it down, guys. And we won this game. And, you know, I didn't play that well. I played those team fights quite poorly. My ultimates were not that good. I did not assess Garen's threats. You know, I just did not play well, and we end up winning this game. So, what we're going to do, we're going to quickly go over one more VOD, just the early laning phase versus the Fizz to tie all this together, right, guys? So lastly, guys, this is the Orianna versus Fizz matchup. I just want to quickly talk over the initial laning phase to just compare how differently you can play the laning phase. Again, because I'm Orianna into a very weak level 1 and level 2 champion, I can, you know, just zone them. I can slow build, poke them under tower. So what do? I'm just literally just walking past the wave, poking them with my Q. Actually opted in for Airy because this is a matchup where I can reliably proc my Airy a lot. Just slow building a wave. I just auto attacked one of the minions and I'm just slow building. And notice how I'm not really having to use my Q on the wave at all. I'm purely holding my Q for Fizz. That's it. Auto attacking and queuing Fizz only. I really want to minimize the amount of Qs I'm using on the wave. Just auto attacking. He ease over my Q. Well played, man. But yeah, just slow building. Beautiful. And then Graves shows top, so I know where Graves is. And again, I only did this as well because I'm bursting at Graves. Graves' early ganks are pretty bad. So it's very free for me to do this strategy. If I'm versing a Jarvan, I wouldn't be able to do this. Definitely not. Just poke, poke, poke. Slow build, slow build. Now in between in the wave at this point in time, around 220, 230, I like to get a ward out, then go back to the lane. In this point in time, I actually didn't need to do this. The reason, because I knew this was an isolated 1v1, but I knew that Graves went straight from red to top, and I knew that if I got a deep ward on those Raptors, I could see his path so much. Like, I could know if he went from Krugs to Raptors, got Raptors, went to his bot side, or even skipped Raptors completely. So I knew I'd get a lot of information. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to poke him too much, but because I was able to slow build earlier on and get some decent poke down, wasn't the end of the world. But now, as the wave's coming out, I have two options. I can actually let the wave come out, thin it a little bit, and make Fizz very vulnerable to ganks, depending on my jungler and where my jungler's location is. Or I can thin it, hold it in the middle, play the slow poke game, and ideally build up another slow push into another reset. There's just so many options I have here. So in this circumstance, Warwick's still showing top, so I know this is like an isolated 1v1. I know he gets level 3 first. I know I got my level 3 now, but I'm just trying to utilize my poke advantage, trying to keep the wave in the middle a little bit. Now I know Graves is dead, my jungler's dead also, so it's just an isolated 1v1. Nothing too special going on here. Look at this, I just win these trades. If Fizz wants to do this, if he wants to get the wave in, he's going to have to take a lot of damage. Now look at this, Fizz, the wave's pushing into me, now I'm pinging assist me, because look at the wave, it's pushing into me, it's a free kill. I mean, or at least blow his flash. And, okay, let's just say Fizz all-ins on the wave and just escapes with HP. I can just kill 2 or 3 of them and reset myself for a Dark Seal or a Null Magic Mantle. Either way, it's good for me. And I'm sitting, and it's going to deny a lot of CS for this Fizz. So I'm trying to bait this Fizz onto me. Then I use my exhaust to slow him down. I could have actually killed this Fizz, but I wasted my Q there. I actually would have solo killed him, I think. But anyway, he ends up just flashing out. And then Fizz ends up just dying randomly. So again, this is how a lot of the time I would operate in these matchups. So what I do right now, I believe I just insta recall, knowing that, what do? Yeah, I thin the wave, then I recall. So as we can see within this strategy, the downside is that at level 3, they get level 3 first. He can play for the bounced wave, and if my jungler's not playing around mid and their jungle hovers mid, then Fizz can easily get the wave in for free. But I usually do this strategy when I have an early aggressive jungler, and I know their jungler isn't that good at ganking early game. Because this way, I get decent damage down level 1 and 2. I get opportunity to get a really nice, decent deep ward. And more importantly, the wave's going to become bouncing out to me, which is going to make Fizz extremely vulnerable. Now, the other way you can play this lane is you can actually just play it very, very slow and just keep it in the middle. And then actually force Fizz to E onto you or Q onto you, in which the wave will actually push into you. And you can make Fizz very vulnerable at like level 2, level 3, the wave being on your side at like level 2, level 3, without having to bounce the wave, and just play a lot slower. This is just a much more fast, aggressive way to play the lane matchup. Either way, it's very, very good. But just keep in mind, test it, see what works for you, your style with the jungle matchup. Maybe you're not confident in jungle tracking doing this thing, you can play it a lot slower. It's really up to you. So hopefully this video covers a lot of the fundamentals with Orianna. I was trying to get across the mindset, how I operate, or how I try and how I feel, what's my mindset with playing Orianna. I'm really trying to get that across in this video. So hopefully this was really helpful for you at all levels of play. Thank you so much for tuning in. Any feedback, greatly appreciated. Cheers.